Hello and welcome. My name is Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story. We are in the middle of a pandemic, but politics seems to be at the heart of every discussion, no matter what you do, every news headline, there's no escaping the politics. Now, the COVID handling, in particular of Uttar Pradesh, has come to be at the center of fault lines within the BJP establishment. We're talking about the rumblings in Uttar Pradesh, where despite self-congratulatory messages by the Chief Minister declaring the second wave is vanquished, the BJP is reported to be extremely concerned. Amid these reports of rumbling, let's play you those pictures of a visitor who came to the national capital yesterday. And today he met with the Prime Minister. We're talking, of course, about Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath. There have been persistent reports of a growing rift, and if not a rift, at least a growing anxiety in the BJP ranks and the BJP central leadership after images like this, mass graves in the riverbanks of the Ganga, have come in from different parts of Uttar Pradesh, and there are serious credibility questions about the official death figures that Uttar Pradesh has released. This even as states like Bihar reconcile their death numbers on orders of the court. What is the truth behind these murmurs? Could COVID cost the BJP politically in Uttar Pradesh, which is looking at an election, of course, in a few months from now? Let's introduce our panel today. We're joined on the program. I'll start from the top. Sandip Ghose, commentator and columnist, is with us. Radhika Ramaseshan, who I believe is, of course, not only one of our best journalists, but really tracks the insides of the BJP in Uttar Pradesh in particular like no one else does. Welcome. Sharat Pradhan, who of course is joining us from Lucknow today, and Sharat is known to pull no punches ever. And Yashwant Deshmukh, who is of course an extremely interesting and unpredictable commentator, a psephologist, a political commentator, a journalist, who follows the numbers and has his ear to the ground. So it's really a pleasure having all of you on the program. And like I said, there have been serious questions about what is the authentic death data out of Uttar Pradesh. Will UP move like Bihar did to reconcile its death data by the thousands, admittedly under the orders of the court? Because remember, Uttar Pradesh, there are three important things about it. One, it is India's politically most important state. Two, it is the state from where the Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, is represented in the constituency of Varanasi. And third, it has been the state along with Bihar where we have seen floating corpses in the Ganga. We have seen these mass graves, and we have also seen disturbing images of those saffron shrouds being removed from those bodies buried in the banks, in particular in Prayagraj. Before we start our conversation today, a short excerpt from a reporting trip I took down the Ganga. I'm playing this because we are repeatedly told, look at how well Uttar Pradesh has managed its numbers. But these numbers are in question, as every local eyewitness testimony, and I've been to 7 different points along the Ganga, says only one thing: we have never seen these many bodies abandoned as we have during the peak of the second wave.
For many days now, we have been tracking India's uncounted COVID bodies of the kind that you see by this riverbank. We're in a boat right now, and we're about to travel down the Ganga River from this ghat, the Mehendi Ghat in Kannauj, to the Nanamu Ghat, which is 30 kilometers away. So let me give you a sense of where we are. First, if you come this side, you will see many bodies of the kind that we have been showing you from different parts of Uttar Pradesh, bodies that have been left on the riverbanks. And even today, you can see from the fresh mud that there are bodies here, abandoned bodies, and literally there are bodies in the hundreds that are here at this Mehendi Ghat in Kannauj. Now we are leaving this Mehendi Ghat and we are traveling by boat to get a sense of what's actually happening with the floating corpses in the Ganga River. Behind me you can see the boatman. The boatman is going to help us cover this journey, which is going to be 30 kilometers. We are going, as we said, from the Mehendi Ghat to the Nanamu Ghat, which is 30 kilometers away. And you can see the situation here. उत्तर प्रदेश की सरकार से अभी तक कोई इसकी एक तरह से ठीक एक्नॉलेजमेंट नहीं आई, लेकिन मैं फिर अपने दर्शकों को दिखाना चाहती हूँ, अगर कैमरा उस तरफ जाए तो आप देख सकते हैं कि यहाँ पर गंगा के किनारे, और थोड़ा मैं कैमरा को नीचे आने को कहूँगी क्योंकि मैं दिखाना चाहती हूँ, ये जो रिवर बैंक के किनारे एक तरह से मैस ग्रेव्स बनती आ रही हैं, शैलो ग्रेव्स, दूर दूर तक अगर आप उस तरफ देखें तो आपको दूर दूर तक दिखेगी कि यहाँ पर रेत में लोग बॉडीज़ अबैंडन करते हुए यहाँ पर छोड़ देते हैं। और हमें बताया भी जा रहा है कि यहाँ पर लोग कह रहे हैं कि हमने कभी भी इस तरह के दृश्य नहीं देखे। हाँ, हो सकता था पहले कुछ जिसको कहते हैं मिट्टी आती हो, कुछ लोग छोड़ जाते हो, लेकिन इस तादाद में, इस संख्या में आप जहाँ देखें आपको दिखेगी कि नई रेत। और वहीं पर in the absence of dignity, even in these moments of death, अगर आप देखें तो you'll see stray animals right next to the bodies, dogs and other animals too. उस तरफ भी मैं आपको दिखाऊं तो आपको वैसे ही दृश्य मिलेंगे। और वापस as we are leaving the मेहंदी घाट, मैं कैमरा से कहूँगी कि इस तरफ आएँ और आपको मैं बैठने के लिए कहूँगी और मैं आपको दिखाऊंगी कि हम छोड़ते हुए जा रहे हैं मेहंदी घाट। एंड बिहाइंड वी हैव ऑलरेडी शोन यू फ्रॉम द ग्राउंड द काइंड ऑफ numbers there are. As we've said, I have personally counted 1,000 and more bodies in the 5 locations I've been to. Let me recount them for you. Unnao, Kanpur, Prayagraj, Varanasi, and now here in Kannauj. और सुभाष भाई से बात करते हैं जो हमारी नाव चला रहे हैं, जो हमें लेके जा रहे हैं इस 30 किलोमीटर के सफ़र पर गंगा नदी के किनारे। सुभाष भाई, आप क्या देख रहे हैं? आप तो ऊपर नीचे आपकी कश्ती जाती है, पिछले 4-6 हफ्ते में क्या देख रहे हैं आप?
मैम, हमने अपनी ज़िंदगी में नहीं देखा इतना जितनी अब बॉडी देखी इस वक्त। और यहाँ बॉडी देखते खन मेरा घबराहट होने लगी। मैंने अपनी बोट भी बंद कर दी।
बोट बंद कर दी? और क्या, मतलब इतनी घबराहट हुई?
हाँ, इतनी लाशें अपनी ज़िंदगी में देखी नहीं मैंने।
इतनी लाशें अपनी ज़िंदगी में देखी नहीं। और ज़्यादा क्या देखा कि लोग छोड़ के जा रहे?
छोड़ के, हाँ मैम।
कब आते थे?
ये दो हफ्ते हो गए आगे।
अच्छा,
हाँ।
और रात को आते हैं? ज़्यादा
रात को भी आते थे।
अच्छा, और जिस घाट पे हम जा रहे हैं वहाँ पे भी उतना ही बुरा हाल है?
इससे ज़्यादा वहाँ भी है।
और वही हो रहा है?
हाँ,
रेत में छोड़ के जा रहे हैं।
छोड़ के।
क्या लगता है आपको कि क्या हो गया इस बारी?
मैम, पता नहीं है क्या हो गया। इससे तो अब आदमी की, सबके संसार में एक ही बात है कि पता नहीं ये क्या हो रहा है।
यहाँ कोरोना को लेके गाँव में कुछ टेस्टिंग वगैरह की बंदोबस्त है? किसी के टेस्ट हो रहे हैं कोरोना के?
अभी तो नहीं हुए हैं।
आपने कराया कभी कोरोना का टेस्ट?
अभी नहीं कराया।
आप कराना नहीं चाहते?
क्यों नहीं, अगर महसूस होगा तो मैं बस कराऊंगा।
गांव में लोग मास्क पहने हैं क्योंकि
हाँ।
आप नहीं पहने?
मैडम, अभी मेरा ये टूट गया है।
अरे, दुपट्टे के साथ कवर कर लो।
अच्छा,
है ना, कवर कर लो, वही अच्छा रहेगा आपके लिए भी। पर आप ये बता रहे थे लाशें अपनी जिंदगी में नहीं देखी। आपको कितना साल हो गया यहाँ पे?
कम से कम जब से मेरी, ये समझ लो 30, 31, 32 साल में हो गए हैं।
32 साल में आपने कभी ऐसी बॉडीज
कभी अपनी लाइफ में नहीं देखी ऐसी।
कितनी देखी होंगी आपने?
अरे मैडम, बस कहो ना, हम तो देखा थे पूरी लाइन के ऊपर लाइन, एक फूक नहीं पाए, दूसरी वहाँ फिर चालू।
और आपको इतना घबराहट हो गया आपने फिर बोट बंद कर दी?
सबरी बंद हो गए। हमारी लोगों ने 7 बोटें हैं, 7 बंद हैं।
क्यों,
क्या कर रहे हैं?
मतलब
हाँ,
मन नहीं हुआ?
बस यही मन हुआ कि कहीं शांति जगह निकल जाओ जहाँ मनुष्य का नाम ही ना हो।
बिल्कुल दिल से बोले कि ऐसा मन हुआ कि कहीं निकल जाओ जहाँ मनुष्य की नाम ही ना हो, क्योंकि इतने सुभाष भाई बॉडीज देख चुके।
Okay, the reason that was actually important to play out is because one of the things we have repeatedly heard from the BJP is that ये पहले भी होता था, bodies पहले भी छोड़ी जाती थी, and they have pointed to previous headlines which have shown that. And what I played you just one testimony. There are many testimonies available on our channel that say the same thing, that the volume, the scale at which this happened during the peak of the second wave is something they've never seen before. Now, this backdrop is important to discuss what's happening within the BJP. What does the central leadership, what does the RSS really believe about how Mr. Adityanath has handled this crisis? Anila Singh of the BJP is also with us. But I'll start with you, Radhika, if I may, because you are from the beginning, you've been making the point that that there is discontent, that there are rumblings, and obviously you're not going to get an official admission of that from the BJP of about a sitting chief minister. But what are you actually picking up? Is it over, in specific, the COVID handling? Is it over concerns over the death data, or is it more with regard to how local BJP leaders perceive Yogi Adityanath in terms of accessibility and how he deals with them? Can we unmute Radhika, please?
And collateral damage that followed are literally the climatic point. Because since 2017, since Yogi took over, I've been sort of covering the BJP and Uttar Pradesh quite closely. And every time I went to Lucknow, I heard nothing but complaints from the BJP, and this includes leaders as well as second rungers, as well as those on the cadre. Inaccessibility, as you rightly pointed out, is one of the issues. But the other one is that Yogi Adityanath, who has his own militia, private militia even now, called the Hindu Vahini, he's been building up the Hindu Vahini as a parallel organization to the BJP and ensuring that it is the Hindu Vahini that services people in all the areas. It is the Hindu Vahini has much freer access to the bureaucracy, the police, and the administration than even the BJP MLAs and MPs. So they are in a position to address people's concerns, get their work done. So it's almost as though Yogi Adityanath was building himself up as a central protagonist of Uttar Pradesh rather than giving the BJP a free play. And this definitely rankled with the BJP, and it was one of the big concerns as far as the BJP is concerned. There were subsidiary problems. Like, one of the first things he did was to cancel the public holiday on Parasuram Divas. And that really chapped with the Brahmins, because Parasuram is an important deity for the Brahmins in Uttar Pradesh. And it was his anniversary was always celebrated as a big event for years. And Yogi Adityanath comes and cancels that. So that was seen as a signal of Rajput's dominance over the Brahmins. And beyond a point, the Brahmins refused to take the insult that was handed over to them. And they kept quiet. They didn't say. I mean, there were private complaints. Sometimes they went public. But this year, on April 14th, the Brahmins of Uttar Pradesh, who included Mahendra Pandey, who is a central minister, as well as Dinesh Sharma, the deputy CM, and the other Brahmin ministers, they celebrated Parasuram Divas on Zoom link, of course. Various speeches were made, and very muted, and nothing, no personal criticism against Adityanath. But one of the points they made was a proper census of the Brahmins, a proper count of the Brahmins has to be taken, because there is a big gap between the population of the Brahmins and the Rajputs. And Brahmins, consequently, as a result of being allegedly undercounted, are underrepresented in politics, in the bureaucracy.
Let me ask you something. Let me ask you something at that point. I'm not sure, and it's debatable of what electoral value Jitin Prasad's induction into the BJP would be, Radhika. But since you are talking about the Brahmin vote, and we've just seen this happen in the last 24 hours, do you see any connection between the sort of rumblings against Adityanath, the caste politics that's playing out within the BJP, the concerns about the Brahmin vote, and Jitin Prasad's induction?
Yeah, can I just take you back a little in time to I think it was sometime in 2020 that a criminal called Vikas Dubey from Kanpur, who had gunned down some 8 cops, was caught, and he was allegedly, he was brought from Madhya Pradesh to Uttar Pradesh. On the way, his car allegedly met with an accident and he died. Now, that sort of, imagine, a criminal became a kind of rallying point for the Brahmins, and Jitin Prasad was one of the few who spoke out for Vikas Dubey. He told me then that, look, the law should have been allowed to take its course. He could have been brought to Lucknow and tried under the law. We don't have a problem. Why did he believe that he was bumped off midway? And Jitin Prasad's allegation was that a lot of Brahmins are being killed in encounters, but believe me, he had no hard data to substantiate his charge. Nonetheless, it became a cause to start what he called the Brahmin Chetna Yatra all over UP. And he was trying to build a Brahmin constituency for himself, show himself as this youthful Brahmin leader who would be of use to any party, But of course, the Congress, being the Congress, really found no use for Jitin Prasad. It was almost as if he was working independent of the Congress. I mean, neither Priyanka nor Rahul, nobody had anything to do with
Okay. So you believe there's a genuine problem. Let me now open that up, and I'll come to Anila Singh in just a moment. But Yashwant, because you study numbers and you know UP also, I think actually all in particular, like I think Yashwant, Sharad, and Radhika like know much more about UP than at least Sandip and me. Really from the ground. Anila, of course, is a politician, so of course she knows it. Yashwant, how much of this is a media's understanding of a crisis that's being overblown, as the BJP would argue, and how much of it is two kinds of fault lines. एक COVID की fault line, एक caste की fault line.
I think both the fault lines are running parallel. The COVID fault line was the first one because that is what has exposed even the caste-basic fault lines, which were simmering for that matter. But Barkha, having said that, with of course Radhika and Prahanji are both very, very senior to me, and they know UP much better than me from their experience. But data which I have been getting, yes, there is anger, no doubt about that. The number of deaths that obviously is underreported. Our own COVID tracker estimate is all across India. We are roughly looking at 1.8 million deaths, which has been reported by the economists today using our data. But that is across India, not just UP. It's a Barkha, I am not getting your voice right now.
I'm saying the Economist, using your data, said that you need to multiply the official figures by a factor of 6. Yashwant, I just wanted to
Yeah,
tell our
that's right.
audience what the
That's right.
Economist said. But go ahead. Yes. Yeah.
Exactly. But there are 2 points. One point from the death perspective, that the data underreporting of the COVID numbers it's a systematic suppression, Barkha. It is as bad as in Bengal or Maharashtra or as in UP. So that's a different thing. But coming from UP myself, the kind of horrors that we have seen, it is impossible to believe that there would be no reaction to it, what has happened on the ground. I don't know of any family who hasn't lost a near and dear one, who hasn't looked into it. Everybody, whomsoever is hailing from UP, including myself, we have all seen that happen. And, when people talk about issues, Barkha, in our tracker and everything, and this, I take really hard time to explain it to them. That, in the tracker, there is a problem, people say that, okay, we have a problem with corruption. When the corruption goes up, people's anger goes up, and corruption comes down, people's angers come down. Same is with the unemployment or any other damn issue under the sun. But when people lose somebody in their family, those who are dead, that is something which is gonna remain there. That memory is not gonna go down. It's not something कि बेरोजगारी का इलाज मिल गया तो बेरोजगारी से नाराजगी कम हो गई, घर में एक और बच्चा पैदा हो गया तो आप किसी मरने वाले को भूल जाए, ऐसे नहीं होता है. So people have lost their near and dear ones, and that anger is gonna remain there. So obviously it is a very critical thing, and as I've always written and said, that the least the governments across India should do is actually to acknowledge the real numbers, pay the respect, due respect to the dead ones. Not acknowledging that people have died is a bigger insult and bigger, I would say, insult to the memory of those who have died. So that is going to be an issue. However, because you also asked me the real politic number and like that, in spite and despite of all the anger, Barkha, something called electoral arithmetic is always gonna remain there. And that electoral arithmetic is right now pretty much lopsided in favor of the BJP as far as UP is concerned. We are looking at a ballpark estimate of 40%, 20%, 20%, and 10%. I'm giving you a ballpark plus minus 5%. Like 40% the bloc with the BJP, 20-20 each with the SP, BSP, and 10% with the Congress and RLD. Now, unless there is a Mahagathbandhan and a very, very good one Mahagathbandhan, like, Mahagathbandhan in 2019 was a right Mahagathbandhan at the wrong time because there was a Modi wave superseding that electoral arithmetic of Mahagathbandhan. But if Mayawati decides that she is going to contest alone, there is no way BJP can be defeated in UP. क्या होगा ज्यादा से ज्यादा बरका 100 सीट कम हो जाएगी 350 से घट के 250 हो जाएंगे but there is not that they are not going to come back to power. So this electoral the brutal electoral arithmetic that is going to make sure that BJP is likely to win UP more than anybody else. And also because of one small factor that you may continue, just one. People talk about the Tina factor and like that. I'm not a great believer of Tina factor. I believe people of India and people at large in a democratic society, they always fill up the vacuum. But one has to work hard. Akhilesh Yadav right now is kind of just sitting pretty and thinking कि लोग आएंगे by default सत्ता का लट्टू मुंह में डाल के जाएंगे. ये बड़े बड़े सत्ता का लट्टू मुंह में नहीं आता बरखा.
नहीं, आपकी ऑपोजिशन के बारे में बिल्कुल ठीक पॉइंट है, लेकिन मुझे आपसे एक चीज पूछनी है यशवंत. द अरिथमेटिक इज लोडेड इन फेवर ऑफ द बीजेपी इज डिफरेंट फ्रॉम द अरिथमेटिक इज लोडेड इन द फेवर ऑफ मिस्टर आदित्यनाथ. ये दो अलग चीजें हैं. So if you were to analyze whether Adityanath is causing murmurs of discontent more than among the voters within the ranks of the BJP itself, how would you read that? And that's where I come back to the COVID and the caste fault lines. The image of the Prime Minister, when reports come out of miscounting in Varanasi, for example, or the fact that a Prime Minister's, a PMO bureaucrat had to step in to fight the fires in the PM's constituency, ये सब फिर अलग चीज हो जाती है. तो हम बीजेपी एक तरफ छोड़े और आदित्यनाथ की बात करें, तो how would you analyze it, Yashwant?
Well, Yogi Adityanath has his own problem of creation for particularly the frustration among the Brahmin voters, just like Radhika has very clearly reported. Brahmins are angry, no doubt about that. And BJP has to do something about it. Either they are going to, it is a Jitin Prasada thing. However, I don't agree with the fact. Jitin Prasada might not add much to the BJP, but certainly it is the bad news for the Congress. That much and no more. I mean, I look at it this way. But however, BJP, no matter how much cosmetic it might look like, BJP will try to do everything that it can to say that we are not really anti-Brahmins. And please try to understand one more aspect of it, Barkha. The growth of BJP or the BJP from the Kalyan Singh's time of a party with about 30% vote to Yogi and Modi's point, that party with 45% or 50% vote in UP, the Brahmins numbers haven't gone up. Brahmins are remaining the same. The growth of BJP is coming from the non-Yadav OBC and non-Jatav Dalits. This is where now the almost 70-80% of the BJP vote bank is coming from. So no matter, regardless how important it might look like or sound like the Brahmins are in electoral arithmetic, please make it very clear that Brahmins are not really the winning proposition for the BJP as far as electoral arithmetic goes.
Yes, I think that's an absolutely fair point. Let me bring in Anila Singh. Anila, the last time you were on the program, you said there's no problem in UP, there's no problem with COVID handling, there's no problem with Adityanath. Then posters, you would have also seen these posters. Posters surfaced online. You can tell us the truth of these posters. और इसमें point out किया गया कि मोदी जी की जो image थी या अमित शाह की image थी, वो थी नहीं. It was also noticed that on Yogi ji's birthday, the Prime Minister and Mr. Shah did not wish him. They even wish opposition leaders. और फिर खबर आई कि RSS के दत्तात्रेय हौसबोले जो है, उन्होंने recommend किया कि एक feedback mechanism होना चाहिए. तो आज के दिन अगर आप analyze करेंगी, तो थोड़ा अलग से करेंगी. Would you agree कि हो सकता है थोड़ी tension थी जो शायद अब resolve हो गई हो, या आप क्या कहेंगी?
I stick to that which I said that day, Barkha. And first of all, like you just now, you showed the poster and you mentioned that picture of Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji is missing from this poster of Bharatiya Janata Party ID, Twitter ID and Facebook ID. So let me mention here, I think nobody tried to know since when this poster is on, or otherwise people know that since when this poster is on, and they simply don't want to discuss about it. So if I talk about this particular poster, this is on since 2019, and there was absolutely no no discussion and no confrontation about it, and suddenly it erupts up and everybody starts talking that there is no picture of Narendra Modi ji in this poster. I think it is not such a big issue, and it is totally an internal matter. You know it very well. Everything is
What
being
about the
monitored.
birth? I mean, I feel silly
All
as a
right,
journalist
and
saying, what about the birthday wishes? But these are the little things we look for as clues. Because if you see somebody saying happy birthday, it's obviously not done by the Prime Minister necessarily himself, but by the PMO's office at a time when a senior bureaucrat of the PMO is sent to Varanasi. What should we make of it, Anila?
see,
If
you call
UP's
this.
handling is so good, why does it need a senior bureaucrat from the PMO to step into Banaras?
See, you call these things clues, and I say these are the spices for the media news to make them more chatpata, and so that people can have more interest in going through the news and all. But anyways, if you talk about wishing on Yogi Adityanath's birthday, it was like by evening, like everybody was talking that HM or PM or our national president, they have not wished him on Twitter. They had talked to him on phone. Then a clarification also came. And you said that if we talk about prime minister or home minister, they wish opposition leaders also on Twitter. They might be wishing opposition leaders on Twitter. योगी आदित्यनाथ जी is ours. वो हमारे अपने हैं. कौन से बात किया? उनको wish किया. So there is a difference. See, there's a difference. So Yogi is ours. So it is always better to talk on phone. Pick up a phone and say hello to him. Happy birthday. All right.
Okay. There have
And,
also been MPs who wrote letters to Adityanath about the COVID handling. आप बरेली की सीट देख लीजिए, वो भी मीडिया में आया, वो चिट्ठी लिखी गई कि जमीन पे किस तरह से मिसहैंडलिंग हो रही थी. कंसर्न्स थे बीजेपी MPs and MLAs के.
absolutely, I can't deny that because we have seen a few of the BJP leaders, they had problems, and definitely they must be facing certain problems. Then only they had come up with it, they had written or they had complained it verbally. So I can't deny this fact. But there was a time, so many cases were coming up, and it was a very difficult situation. It was a very difficult situation. I mean, few days were, I can say, they were like hell for whole of the country. And if I strictly talk about our Uttar Pradesh, like hospitals were flooded, beds were unavailable. I mean, this is the raw reality. But the thing is, whether the government was doing anything or not, whether Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath was doing anything or not, yes, indeed, he was, and his government too. Like day in and day out, the whole of the team, they were working to give the facilities to the patients and the relatives. You cannot say that they were sitting idle at home and they were relaxing. No,
Okay. You have, of course, you have to defend your party, you have to defend your chief minister. You've done that. Let me get Sharat and Sandip in, and then we'll go around the panel again. Sharat, you're in Lucknow. What's actually going on the ground? Can we unmute Sharat, please?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, Barkha, there's a lot of speculation, and which is not baseless. You know, it has been going on for the past 2 weeks in particular, and they were with all this with a standoff between Modi and Yogi Adityanath. The picture was becoming more like some kind of paving the way for Yogi's exit. But eventually, I think they worked out a solution, and that is why Yogi was called to Delhi. And eventually, they worked out a midway path that Yogi stays, but he concedes whatever Modi desires. Because the way the story was building up, that Yogi was defying Narendra Modi. And obviously, I mean, nobody can imagine a chief minister of his party defying Prime Minister Modi. And considering that the kind of the nature that he has, and people felt that Yogi, not being a routine politician who has risen from the ranks, he's neither a RSS man nor a BJP man, as you pointed out about, as Radhika pointed out about his Yuva Vahini, he's risen from there, and he considers that he is on his own steam. So this kind of he's known for his arrogance, and that is what most of the leaders of the party, or most of the legislators of the party have been complaining. It's not just complaint coming from one corner. Anila Singh has a right to defend her party and try to term the whole thing as, nothing is just a routine affair. But fact of the matter is that a couple of ministers, both Yogi Adityanath's own cabinet colleagues as well as minister from Delhi, a very senior minister, Santosh Gangwar, wrote to the chief minister of the kind of the mishandling of the corona second wave, and there was little that was done. The problem with the chief minister is that he always loves to remain in denial mode, and anybody questioning him it becomes comes on his target. And for all kinds of sedition and anti-national activity, he would be charged for that. So, and he has gone to the extent of threatening that first of all claiming that no deaths had taken place in UP because of shortage of oxygen, and anybody accusing the government of that could be tried under the National Security Act.
Yeah.
So that is the kind of atmosphere he had built. So my information is that nearly 250 MLAs had expressed their reservations against his style of functioning before the RSS and BJP leaders, who were specially sent from Delhi to hold talks with individual, with groups of MLAs and with individual MLAs. Then at the end of the day, the BJP has the cheek to say, no, everything is all right. They just come for it was a routine chat.
Well, they're not. Well, no political party, BJP or
Obviously.
Congress or any other party is going to admit to the media that there are problems within. That's too much for us to expect. Our job is to find out what's happening behind the denials. Sandeep, you have been arguing कि सच है या झूठ है. The image of the BJP in the middle of this crisis is being hurt. If I remember your tweet accurately, you said quash these rumors if they're rumors. Who was it hurting more? Do you think it was also hurting the image of the central leadership? Because we cannot overlook the fact that Mr. Modi's constituency is in UP, that this is the next critical election, and of course the UP local elections, which I of course think should never have been held. I think they sent 1,600 government teachers to their death, but that's another program for another time. The fact is that they were held, and the results did cause concern to the BJP. Sandeep, go ahead.
So my reading of this is, Barkha, what was happening, I thought this will have a snowballing effect. There was a problem of COVID, and then if you have these issues within the party, and if that gets amplified, it's going to really snowball and into a bigger political crisis at a time when the nation needs to cope with the humanitarian crisis. And that's what I had mentioned in your program earlier. See, I'm speaking under the guidance of very people who are very who are experienced as well as experts in UP. From my knowledge, I used to be working there and have a fair amount of, I used to do groundwork. I have seen in Yogi's thing, there are two parts to it. Right from the beginning, his style is such that he would naturally alienate his MPs and people, or his MLAs. But as long as the party is doing well, the party's image is great, they will not really be able to raise their voices or bother. But what happened after COVID is all of them started feeling insecure, with whatever was happening around them. And it's not a matter of statistics, whether it's 6 times or 10 times, as it's a matter of perceptions and visuals. So if people have seen in their constituency there is angst, there is a grief, etc., so they start feeling very, very insecure. And so that's why you saw the reactions of people like Gangwar or anybody else, which they would not have done even if they were dissatisfied with Yogi at this point in time, if you didn't have such a massive tragedy. The other thing which had happened at this period, I think, unlike in the first round of COVID, this time maybe because the scale was so high, the government was not seen visibly so effective or active in tackling the COVID thing. In fact, that is what I think caused a greater amount of distress. Because if there is tragedy happening around you, but the government is trying, people see people, administration trying, etc., so there is some degree of consolation. But when your own people are dying and what you see, they can't get a bed in the hospital or they can't get anything else, so that really whips up an anti-incumbency kind of factor. Now, Yogi's strength, I would think, is Sharad can validate, Yashwant can say this. The people, there could have been, disenchantment among the Brahmins, etc. But his style of management had got a lot of support from the ordinary people because they started seeing things for the first time, moving, administration working, etc. And that is what he,
So, 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 so let me just
banked
jump in
upon.
there. Yeah, let me just jump in there, and I'll take that to Yashwant and Radhika, and then to Sharad. There's always been this kind of mixed feedback, and even in the last election, in 2019, rather, Yashwant, there was great talk about, disenchantment over the stray cattle issue. A lot of people said Yogi ko leke bahut gussa hai, but eventually the Modi factor trumped any gussa, and then there's a certain kind of certain kind of middle class vote which would say at least law and order, he's a tough leader. So there's a contradictory kind of feedback, just picking up on Sandeep's point on Yogi Adityanath. If you looked at that contradictory feedback and you also looked at Yashwant's the results of the local elections, how do you read what we saw in the local elections, or should we not extrapolate too much for the state from them?
I would not extrapolate too much from the local elections, Barkha. And I have my reasons to it. And statistical as well as logical, both. That way. When you look into the local elections, everybody starts comparing it with the Lok Sabha. Comparing apple with the apple and oranges with the oranges. When you look into the local election results of 5 years back, you will come up to altogether a different conclusion. That it is a huge crash landing for the Samajwadi Party and a huge, upswing for the BJP. But when you compare it to the Lok Sabha sweep, obviously it will look very different. Having said that, we also know for sure in Lok Sabha election there is almost 10% point of approximately average, what I may call it as a Modi dividend to the BJP. We have always seen in all the assembly elections and the local elections, the BJP vote share drops, and Lok Sabha election it bounces. It's a split vote, which you remember. It was a term which I started using in 2004 verdict. That the lack of a split verdict is what is causing BJP's defeat in 2004, and the opposite is happening right now. Now, is Yogi unpopular? That's a key question. He is unpopular or not? Among whom? If you are talking about the electorate, his own support base, he's not at all. He's a big time hero. As Sandeep just said, his people, what the kind of policy or the kind of law and order management, the way shooting down the Gunda element or the encounters. Now, these kind of things might look bad in the media, in the judiciary, but as far as the common man is concerned, his voters are concerned. For them, this is what they expected from Yogi to deliver, and that's what he's delivering. However, having said that, COVID is an altogether different out of syllabus question. Yogi had his own image and work sorted as far as his work was concerned. The way I am a hard taskmaster, I am ruthless on the mafia, I am this, I am that. And he was working okay. Stray cattle or not, people were happy that, the kind of a hard line. He was being treated as a mini Modi that way, if I may call so. People were happy. COVID is a kind of a question which is completely out of syllabus for that kind of governance. Because here we are looking at not something Hindutva, not encounters, not hard line, soft line. It's not that. It's about people dying, people losing their near and dear ones, friends, families, immediate families. And that is not something which is covered in any curriculum whatsoever, political curriculum, no matter which leader we are talking about, no matter which political party or ideology we are talking about. So that is where it has got derailed. I don't really believe that among the masses, I don't really believe that among the masses, Yogi is unpopular. I don't really agree to that. As as far as his electoral base is concerned. But yes, among the masses, there is also extreme anger right now as far as the mismanagement of COVID concerned, and also as far as the denial of the things that have gone wrong is concerned. More than the people are angry, not just because people have died. People are not just angry that there was no oxygen. People are angrier because there is a denial that there was a lack of oxygen. There is a denial that people have died. That is something which has gone wrong big time, and I believe that that has taken the beating as far as Prime Minister's ratings is also concerned. And this is why, now we are reaching a situation where if the Chief Minister's ratings is down, okay, state government rating is down, manageable, central government's ratings are down, still manageable, but PM, they start taking a hit because of these misgovernance or because of miscalculations whatsoever. That is something which is non-negotiable as far as RSS or the BJP or Mr. Modi or anybody in that ecosystem is concerned. So obviously things are going to be taken care of. Even Mr. Yogi has to come up upfront and understand where he is lacking, and once you are down, then obviously everybody who is upset and angry will be making all sort of noises.
So a very important point: COVID is not really studied in any political curriculum. All bets are off because you don't actually know how people are going to react, and this is the Prime Minister's image, not just Yogi's image, at stake. Radhika, let me take that to you. Go ahead.
Oh, I think he made a pertinent point about law and order management. Because if you remember, Yogi's innings began with a spate of encounter killings by the cops, and mainly in West UP, targeting small-time criminals from among the Muslims. I mean, let me be upfront. So that kind of really gladdened the hearts of the hardcore Hindus who voted for the BJP's Hindutva agenda. You cannot separate Yogi from the Hindutva image at all. So he kept pandering to that constituency. Now, what happened with the pandemic? Pandemic is not about Hindutva. It is not about pro or anti-minorities. It just affected everybody across the board. Rich, poor, middle class, young, old, middle-aged, whatever. And, I still think the sight of those bodies, the corpses floating down on the Ganga or being washed up on the river bank, the comments from...
And also the shrouds being removed. This is not...
Shrouds being removed. The Ram Nami shrouds being removed. That is blasphemy. That to me amounts to utter blasphemy. I do not know, I don't see the Hindu community taking that lying down, no. I mean, no matter what Yogi may have done in the past for the hardcore Hindus, I think this must have definitely singed the bhakts, because death, birth, death, marriage, even a mundan ceremony, these are all non-negotiable for the faithful. And if you are going to be so cavalier towards the dead, not pay any attention, the administration couldn't arrange cremations, couldn't arrange vote, couldn't arrange ghee. I mean, it is shocking. It is shocking. And however efficient, quote unquote, Yogi may have been at the start of the innings, everything unraveled this time. And I think in the elections, he will be called to account. I mean, whether there's a robust opposition or not, I'm not going into that. Maybe the opposition is deliberately keeping quiet, because if they start making a noise and being overtly aggressive, it could lead to a counter consolidation.
But Radhika, to be fair, that wouldn't explain the complete invisibility. I mean, I know we're not discussing Akhilesh and Priyanka Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi, but these are all, Priyanka Gandhi is General Secretary in charge of the state. Yes. Rahul Gandhi used to be from UP. Akhilesh has been near invisible. So a lot of times the BJP is able to ride its worst storms simply because there is nobody to galvanize and consistently work as hard as the BJP does electorally.
Absolutely.
I mean, that is true, and you have to say it.
I have to fully agree, because the Samajwadi Party, despite its reduced numbers, is still the largest opposition in the legislature. Have they made an imprint? Have they taken on the government on any issue so far? No, none at all. The Gandhis, I mean, the less said, the better. Priyanka kind of flits in and out. I mean, she's extremely, as they say, that, a seasonal bird. When she feels like, she flies in. When she doesn't want, she doesn't go. So I'm not going into with the Congress at all. Mayawati has retreated into a shell from which she still hasn't come out. She's visible on Twitter now and then, and most of her tweets, mind you, are conciliatory towards the BJP. So you really don't have an opposition shaping up so far in Uttar Pradesh, and that might, in the ultimate analysis, see the BJP through. Though I'm getting increasingly skeptical even about that. Sometimes, I mean, just sometimes, an opposition may not be that visible, but people may want to vote out the incumbent government regardless of who they are voting
Well,
in.
we don't know the answer to this, but what we
We
do
don't
know
know
is
the
that the
answer.
BJP, and I think Yashwant's point is just it keeps staying with me that there is no curriculum, political curriculum for COVID. In a way, all bets are off. Anila, both Yashwant and Radhika made the point that the normal Hindutva calculation doesn't apply to COVID. It transcends it when people die, but there is a sense of even Hindu identity being offended when you see these images. And I just want to play them again. I know the government later said an inquiry was ordered into how these saffron Ramnami chadars were removed from the shallow sort of graves in Prayagraj. But when our reporter was there at the ground, the police actually went on record to say that they were supervising this removal. तो बाद में जो बयान आया कि इसकी इंक्वायरी हो रही है वो कुछ समझ नहीं आया. Maybe you can explain this.
See, when I see dead bodies burning in Shamshan, when I see these optics which you are showing right now, the dead bodies buried on the banks of the river Ganga, and the Ram Navi shrouds being removed by a few of the people. I mean, you may start attacking me what I'm going to say right now. I see a conspiracy. Why I see a conspiracy? Like, you people can help me out to clear that conspiracy if I am wrong. See, all these objects are of whom? They are of Hindus. Okay, dead bodies burning in Shamshan. और ये रामनवमी की चद्दर जो हटाई जा रही है, किसकी हटाई जा रही है? हिंदुओं के ऊपर. I have not seen single object from Kabristan.
I have done many reports from Kabristan. I'll send you the links. मैंने बहुत किए हैं, बहुत सारी reports की हैं Kabristan
because
से.
continuously these optics are being showed not only on your show but otherwise also throughout the media, Indian media, international media. But I need to understand: does this virus knows this thing that this person is Hindu, that person is Muslim? I am going to infect Hindu, and I am not going to infect Muslim. So why not we are seeing pictures from Kabristan? Why only from Shamshan? My only question is this. So I definitely say I have got strong doubts, I'll say. I will not say I'm 100% sure about it, but definitely I smell that something is definitely
conspiracy. When you say it's a conspiracy, can I ask you something? Okay, आपने कहा कि आप ग्रेवयार्ड से नहीं देखते. मैं आपको खुद व्हाट्सएप पे शो के बाद बहुत सारी लिंक्स भेजूंगी जो मैंने ग्रेवयार्ड से की है, लेकिन मेरा सवाल कुछ अलग था. ये रामनामी चादर हम तो नहीं हटवा सकते अगर आप कह रहे हैं कि हमारा बायस है. हम तो नहीं जाके प्रयागराज में रामनामी चादर हटवा सकते. पुलिस ने हमें एक स्टेटमेंट बकायदा दी कि ये अलाउड नहीं है यहाँ पर, ये बॉडीज यहाँ पे रहना, तो हम इनको we are in the process of having them removed. Later we also saw some of these bodies were cremated on pyres. But ये जब चादरें हटवाई गई तो उसके बाद स्टेट गवर्नमेंट ने कहा हम इसकी इंक्वायरी कर रहे हैं. But the police was standing there when this was happening, Anila. Whether you think the media is biased or not, we cannot get these Ramnami chadars removed, no?
See, I'm not saying whether media is biased or not, but my only query was that why not Kabristans are showed, only Shamshans are showed. So that is my problem. And secondly, we say about the inquiry, yes, indeed, there is a procedure and a process for any inquiry to be conducted. And I'm pretty sure the report will be out soon, and then again you can question all about it. But the thing is, the way everything has been projected by people, I'll say, I'll just take everybody under one umbrella, that Yogi government failed in handling COVID situation in Uttar Pradesh. And I think these all were the parameters. As I told you, there came a time, definitely there came a time when I mean, right or left, everybody was getting infected. People wanted bed. People wanted oxygen. Yes, that was a very, very bad time. But not only with Uttar Pradesh, I think so. Everybody was going through it. So why
Okay.
only Uttar Pradesh is
Okay,
being targeted?
let
Why
me
only
take
Yogi
up.
Adityanath is
Okay,
being
you raised
targeted?
a question and it gives me a thought, and I want to spend the last 5 minutes taking last comments on your thoughts. Sandeep, one of the things the BJP is actually quite good at, and it works for them as a political narrative, whether it's true or false, is to present the the Hindu as a victim, a victim of bias, a victim of minority appeasement, a victim of double standards, and that's just what we heard. And Anila is not the only one. There have been a number of BJP supporters who have had similar arguments, similar commentary online. Could this then be the narrative? Could we be back to the sort of Hindu as victim trope to handle or to deflect from the COVID headlines?
No, even if they do, as Yashwant said, this is not part of the regular syllabus. So deaths have occurred irrespective of whether you have shown the deaths in Kabristan or not. Deaths have occurred across all communities. But where I differ, Barkha, and take a slightly agnostic or a moral stand, is two things. One is the boatman told you he hasn't seen so many deaths, but that's a fact. You've never had a calamity of this scale. So they would have seen, and what he was talking about, his shock, that is natural. If he has seen earlier 10 dead bodies and he's suddenly seeing 100 or more than that, it's a matter of shock. Secondly, removing the Ramnami Chadar again, you are showing it. There may be these drone images showing it, but that does not really, every person in the village is neither seeing or not reacting to that per se. But what has affected people is what Anila was saying, that is my sense, is when the problem was there was no recourse. So if like somebody is falling sick in your house, and if you know that's the end of the story because I can't get treatment, can't get them oxygen, that's when you start feeling helpless. And that's where the whole angst builds up. And that's where I was saying this time around, because the scale was so large and because it was out of control, the government, he could not even show that, okay, I'm in charge and we are trying to do the best. And that did
Well,
not
one of the
convince.
ways that he has shown that, Sharat, and we have those numbers, if you look at the death data, especially after Bihar has reconciled its data on orders from the court, UP's death data, looks like oddly low, given what all of us who've traveled on the ground are picking up on the ground, right? So, Sharat, how do you read this?
Just 1 minute before Sharat, I would
Yeah,
say
okay.
that I told this earlier, Barkha, for the common man, statistics does not matter. So this time the people have actually seen around them the deaths. So if you see 5 deaths around you, it does not matter
No,
whether
no,
there
I
have been
agree.
5
And I
lakh,
just,
etc. So that is what
bilkul,
has
Cheek.
happened.
But still,
Absolutely. And I just want to say that, look, if you just look at it, 80 deaths in UP, 358 in Tamil Nadu, much higher. I think we were close, Sharat, the point is you can
yeah,
visually see the deaths.
yeah, actually, no, I went to the extent of actually counting and physically counting, keeping a count of the deaths, that the cremations that were taking place and burials that were taking place in one of the cremation grounds and burial grounds in Lucknow. In that to set the record straight. On the days when the government reported a total of 24 or 32 deaths in Lucknow, in just one cremation ground, the number of cremations for COVID, mind you, COVID was a segregated portion. The count was 138. You see the scale of undercounting, and this was being at the same time in the burial ground. If the actual burials were 38 or 40, and it was registered in their records, the total count that they were showing was only 24, which is including, there are 4 major cremation grounds and 4 burial grounds in Lucknow. So this is just an example of this, and you can imagine the scale at which what it was being done across the state. And this is something which my Sandeep may not agree, but it's not the common man. The middle class is certainly affected by this. How many
And I was
people
just
have
going to
gone
say, when you can
unaccounted?
see,
Please let me complete.
sorry.
Yeah, the manner in which this has been done is so blatant that people are not going to forget this. No matter, and no matter how much Anila Singh might try to give it a twist, I think this is one of the damage control measures this party has thought of to describe it as media targeting the Hindus, so that it seems like I know the BJP doing a bad cop with Hindus. So, but the fact is, people have seen it. Even the bhakts, as I would call them, have noticed this. That because when you lose a member of your family, whether it is the uneducated, poor, illiterate class in the villages, or the better off middle class in the urban areas, they are not going to forget this. And of course, BJP is going to undertake a lot of these damage control measures. Yogi Adityanath, the day before yesterday, announced has released 230 crores to supposedly 23 lakh migratory labor. I don't know where they got this figure from, but 23 lakh migratory labor, 1,000 rupees each. These are the kind of measures and they think they can silence the anger by doing these kind of things. And you'll come up, and I mean, I don't want to say much. Radhika has already stated, I agree with every word of what she has said. Okay, and we have to have that, and we have an open mind. It is not that anybody is prejudiced, but the fact of that, and what the government tried systematically was to compel people to shut their eyes to reality.
And so I was just going to say exactly that. I'm really sorry, but I have literally a minute left, so I'll give the last word to Yashwant. Okay. And sorry, Sharat, but you made your point very passionately. I'm just saying that if you look at the death comparisons, 1,915 deaths in Maharashtra, close to 400 in Tamil Nadu, and 80 in UP. And then you think about the fact that, we have visually seen every गांव वाला will tell you कि मई के महीने में 5 मिट्टी इन हिंदी ही से यहाँ से मेरे गांव से 5 मिट्टी जाती थी रोज. अभी थोड़ा कम हो गया लेकिन अभी भी बहुत है. Who's going to believe 80 deaths in all of UP, right? No one is going to believe that number. And Bihar went through this. Bihar had a very low death figure, and it suddenly Yashwant added 9,000, taking the India figure over 6,000 a day for those 24 hours. So last word to you, Yashwant. People can see, I think as the entire panel has said, it doesn't matter what the official data is. लोग गांव-गांव में देख सकते हैं. लोग देख सकते हैं कि गंगा के किनारे कितनी बॉडीज अशोर हैं. लोग देख सकते हैं कि मैस ग्रेव्स हैं. और हजारों की तादाद में की संख्या में बॉडीज छोड़ी जा रही है. And people dying at home in the villages. That's a very important point. जिनकी गिनती भी नहीं हो रही है, जो हॉस्पिटल तक पहुंचते भी नहीं.
Exactly the point, Barkha, that, it's more than the death and the lack of oxygen. It is the denial of the issue that has happened. It might pain to me for certain thing. You may empathize with me. You may not have a solution for that. I might agree to that. But if you will even deny the dignity of the death, if you will even deny me that solace of at least acknowledging that I have an issue, I have a problem, I have a death in the family. Personally speaking, everybody has been affected. I mean, I never say this on TV or anything like that, but just when Sharatji was saying what everybody has gone through, the day the counting was on, I was live, just like this one. And I lost a relative in Lucknow, Barkha. And you won't believe the problem was not that how and what happened. Problem that my extended family in Lucknow at that point of time was facing, that there was a 2-day wait list at the cremation ground. And I had a very senior cabinet minister, a friend of mine, just to ensure that the body gets cremated. And I will never, दो चीजें दिमाग में उस समय आई बरखा. पहली बात तो जिंदगी में कभी ये नहीं सोचा था कि 2 दिन का श्मशान घाट में वेट लिस्ट देखना पड़ेगा, नंबर 1. दूसरी बात जो मुझे उस समय पे दिमाग में आई कि हमारे तुम्हारे जैसे लोग या बाकी और जो समाज के लोग जिनके पास में फिर भी we have got friends across the spectrum and like that. I would say we are resourceful. At least I could call somebody to arrange a cremation. How many 99.99999% don't have that kind of leverage, right? And trust me, this would be the last thing that I would ever think of कि मेरी पोजीशन के कारण मैं कोई लेवरेज यूज कर पाऊं, वो भी किस चीज के लिए? मैंने एहसान भी लिया तो किस चीज के लिए बरका? कि आउट ऑफ टर्न मेरे किसी एक जान पहचान वाले की का अंतिम संस्कार हो जाए, you know. So I guess that these are the things, these are the stories, every not just UP wala, and I am absolutely sure in other states also, you know. Right now our focus is on UP because of Yogi and everything, and trust me Barkha, you will dig up any state, you are going to get the same similar stories. So this data fudging on the death is not just a UP alone. I mean, yes, our focus right now is UP, that's fine, but it's a age old thing. I mean, Radhika
Yes,
and
yes,
Sharat
of
ji would
course.
tell you stories after that. क्राइम रेट कम करना होता है तो अपने सिस्टम में क्या होता है, पहला काम होता है FIR करनी बंद कर दो, क्राइम रेट कम हो जाता है. We know, we have been there, we have seen that, you know. So there is something to it, but having said that, COVID is completely out of syllabus. Even the most sympathetic people who would be sympathetic towards politically or ideology to the BJP and RSS and everything, I guess everybody will be having a story to say, you know, to tell
Yeah,
what has gone wrong where. And the least
bilkul.
that those who in power can do is to acknowledge, you know, provide the dignity to the death by counting them in, that we know your people died. That is the least the people in
Absolutely.
power can do.
Absolutely, and I think that is something we can all agree with, and we leave it there on that somber note. And of course, Yashwant, that trauma that you went through, we're sorry for it, but you're absolutely right that Indians across states have gone through it. There is data fudging happening across states, and as Yashwant's data published in The Economist shows, the factor it could be as high as 6, which means that when you read the official death counts, you will be multiplying it into 6 to getting a real sense of how many people have died. That is a staggering truth, and it cannot not have an impact on how politics plays out, in particular in the heartland, where those dramatic images of those bodies. And by the way, when we asked locals why those bodies are being abandoned, दो कारण दिए जाते थे. एक स्टिग्मा, कोविड का स्टिग्मा, दूसरा पैसे नहीं, शमशान घाट पे जगह नहीं जैसे यशवंत ने बताया, पर तीसरा लोगों के पास पैसे नहीं है, लकड़ी के लिए पैसे नहीं, अंतिम संस्कार करने के लिए पैसे नहीं. So that has been the reality of the testimonies we've picked up in UP. Yashwant, Radhika, Sharat, Sandip, Anila, thank you. And to our audience, thank you for watching. In about 15 minutes from now, is it time to reopen schools as the World Health Organization and the UNICEF wants, or is it simply too dangerous? That program coming up. If you'd like to tune in, we'll be back live 15 minutes from now. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.